I always thought the word home meant safety, that it was a place where you could let your guard down, where the people inside those walls would always have your back. But for me, home was a place of quiet competition, of whispered comparisons and invisible scorecards. My brother, Ethan, was the golden child. He was the one who got the biggest slice of cake, the loudest applause at school plays, the first pick of everything. I was the afterthought, the one who learned to celebrate in silence, to find pride in the shadows. It wasn't always this way. When we were little, Ethan and I were inseparable. We built forts in the backyard, raced our bikes down the hill, and made up secret codes to keep our parents guessing. But as we grew, the gap between us widened. My parents started to see him as the future of the family, the one who would carry on the name, the one who could do no wrong. I became the helper, the peacemaker, the one who was always told, be more like your brother. I tried. I really did. I got good grades, joined clubs, volunteered at the animal shelter. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. If I brought home an A, Ethan had an A+. If I won a medal, Ethan had a trophy. My parents' praise for him was endless. Their expectations for me were always just out of reach. I learned to swallow my disappointment, to smile through the sting, to pretend it didn't matter. But it did matter. It mattered the day my grandmother passed away, and everything changed. Grandma Rose was the only one who saw me. She was the one who slipped me extra cookies when no one was looking, who listened to my stories, who told me I was special just the way I was. She lived in the old white house at the end of Maple Lane, the one with the blue shutters and the wild rose bushes. Every summer, I'd spend weeks with her, helping in the garden, reading on the porch, learning how to bake her famous apple pie. She promised me that one day, the house would be mine. You belong here, she'd say, her eyes twinkling. This is your home, too. When she died, I was devastated. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and cold hands. My parents were busy greeting relatives. Ethan was surrounded by friends, and I felt invisible. After the service, my parents called a family meeting. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling, as my father read Grandma's will. My heart pounded as he reached the part about the house. To my beloved grandchildren, I leave my home and all its contents to be shared equally. I looked at Ethan, hope flickering in my chest. Maybe for once, things would be fair. But my parents had other plans. It makes sense for Ethan to have the house, my mother said, her voice brisk. He's the eldest, he'll start a family soon. You're still figuring things out. My father nodded, not meeting my eyes. We'll make sure you get something, but the house should stay with Ethan. I wanted to scream, to protest, to remind them of Grandma's words. But the room was already moving on, decisions being made without me. Ethan shrugged, looking almost apologetic. It's just a house. You can visit anytime. I left the table. My heart shattered. It wasn't just a house. It was the only place I'd ever truly felt at home. And now it was gone. The weeks that followed were a haze. I went back to my apartment in the city, threw myself into work, tried to forget the ache in my chest. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grandma's house, the blue shutters, the wild roses, the promise she had made me. I stopped answering my parents' calls, ignored Ethan's texts. I needed space, needed to figure out who I was without the weight of their expectations. One evening, as I walked home from work, I passed a real estate office. In the window was a photo of a house. White siding, blue shutters, a wild tangle of roses. My breath caught in my throat. It was Grandma's house. The sign read, "Sold." I stood there staring at the photo, anger and grief swirling inside me. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking, and called my mother. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, my voice raw. She sighed as if I was being unreasonable. It was too much for Ethan to handle. He decided to sell. We thought it was best for everyone. Best for everyone. Except me. I hung up, my mind racing. I couldn't get the image of the house out of my head. I needed to see it one last time, to say goodbye. That weekend, I drove back to Maple Lane. The house looked the same, but different. The new owners had painted the door, trimmed the roses, but the spirit of Grandma was still there. I stood on the sidewalk, memories flooding back, and made a decision. If I couldn't have Grandma's house, I'd build my own home, my own legacy, my own story. As I drove away, I noticed a for sale sign in the yard next door. The house was smaller, a little run down, but it had potential. I called the number on the sign, scheduled a viewing, and within a month, the house was mine. I moved in, determined to make it my own. I painted the walls, planted roses in the garden, filled the rooms with laughter and light. Every morning, I looked out the window at Grandma's house, a bittersweet smile on my lips. I was close enough to remember, but far enough to start over. But I wasn't done yet. I had a plan, one that would change everything. The first night in my new house was both lonely and liberating. I lay on the creaky mattress in the empty bedroom, listening to the wind rattle the old windows, and felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in my life, I was living somewhere that was truly mine. No one's expectations, no one's rules, no one's shadow looming over me. I could almost hear Grandma's voice in the quiet, telling me I was exactly where I needed to be. But the ache of what I'd lost was still there, sharp and insistent. Every morning, I'd see Ethan's car in the driveway next door, hear the sound of his laughter drifting through the open windows. He'd moved in with his fiancée, Lauren, and they wasted no time making the place their own. New curtains, a fresh coat of paint, a shiny grill on the back patio. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of them through the fence, hosting friends, celebrating milestones, living the life my parents always imagined for me, just not with me in it. I tried to keep my distance, but the universe had other plans. One Saturday morning, as I was struggling to assemble a bookshelf in my living room, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ethan standing on the porch, holding a plate of cookies and wearing an awkward smile. "Hey," he said, shifting from foot to foot. "Lauren baked too many. Thought you might want some." I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. He looked around, taking in the half-unpacked boxes, the bare walls, the chaos of starting over. "Place looks good," he said, though it was clear he was just being polite. "Thanks," I replied, setting the cookies on the counter. "Still a work in progress." He nodded, his gaze lingering on the window that faced Grandma's old house. "It's weird, isn't it, living next door to each other?" I shrugged, not trusting myself to say more. The silence stretched between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. "Look, I know you're upset about the house. I didn't want to sell it, but it was too much. Too many memories, you know?" I studied his face, searching for sincerity. For the first time, I saw the uncertainty in his eyes, the weight of being the golden child. Maybe he didn't want all this responsibility. Maybe he was just as lost as I was. "I get it," I said quietly, "but it still hurts." He nodded, looking relieved that I hadn't started a fight. "If you ever want to come over, you're welcome. Lauren's been asking about you." I forced a smile, thanked him for the cookies, and watched him disappear back through the hedges. I closed the door, leaning against it, and let out a long breath. Maybe things could be different between us. Maybe not. But I wasn't going to let the past define me anymore. Instead, I threw myself into making my house a home. I spent weekends at flea markets, hunting for furniture with character. I painted the kitchen a cheerful yellow, hung fairy lights in the backyard, and planted a row of rose bushes along the fence, my own tribute to Grandma. I invited friends over for dinner, filled the rooms with music and laughter, and slowly, the emptiness faded. But the more I built my new life, the more I realized I wanted to do something bigger, not just for myself, but for others who'd felt overlooked, underestimated, or left behind. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping kids with their homework, teaching them how to bake, just like Grandma taught me. Their stories reminded me of my own, kids who felt invisible, who needed someone to believe in them. One evening, as I was walking home from the center, I passed by Grandma's house. The porch light was on, and I could see Lauren inside, setting the table for dinner. For a moment, I felt a pang of jealousy, but then I remembered how far I'd come. I had my own home, my own life, my own purpose. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. That night, I sat on my porch, sipping tea and watching the stars. I thought about all the times I'd been told I wasn't enough, all the times I'd been asked to step aside, to make room for someone else's dreams. And I realized that I was done waiting for permission to live my own life. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. I wanted to honor Grandma's memory, not by clinging to the past, but by building something new. I started researching ways to turn my house into a place of refuge, a safe space for kids who needed a break from their own families, a place where they could feel seen and valued. I reached out to local organizations, met with social workers, and started the process of becoming a foster parent. It wasn't easy. There were background checks, interviews, endless paperwork, but I was determined. I wanted to give kids what I'd always wanted, a home where they felt safe, loved, and important. As the weeks passed, my house transformed. I set up a cozy reading nook in the living room, stocked the kitchen with snacks, and decorated the bedrooms with bright colors and soft blankets. My friends pitched in, donating books, games, and art supplies. The community center helped spread the word, and soon I was welcoming my first foster child, a shy, quiet girl named Mia. Mia reminded me so much of myself at her age. Cautious, uncertain, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. But slowly, she started to open up. We baked cookies together, planted flowers in the garden, and spent long evenings reading stories on the porch. She told me about her dreams, her fears, her hopes for the future, and I listened, really listened, the way Grandma used to listen to me. Word spread quickly. Other kids came and went, each one leaving their mark on my heart. My house became a haven, a place of laughter and healing. I found a sense of purpose I'd never known before, a reason to get up every morning, a reason to keep going. And all the while, Ethan watched from next door. Sometimes he'd wave from his porch, sometimes he'd stop by with Lauren to drop off a casserole or a bag of groceries. We started talking more, sharing stories, finding common ground. The old rivalry faded, replaced by something like friendship. But I knew my parents would find out eventually. And when they did, everything would change. It was a Sunday afternoon when my parents finally showed up. I was in the backyard, helping Mia and 2 other foster kids paint flower pots, when I heard the familiar crunch of tires on gravel. My mother's voice carried over the fence, sharp and unescapable. "Is that really necessary? Paint everywhere." My father followed, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the yard as if he were searching for something he'd lost. I wiped my hands on a towel, walked over, heart pounding. Mia shrank behind me, clutching her paintbrush. I gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay, Mia. These are my parents." My mother's eyes darted from the kids to the house, her lips pursed. "We heard you've been busy," she said, her tone making it clear she didn't approve. "I exempted, man. I have more than enough, Mom, and these kids need a place to feel safe. I want to give them what Grandma gave me." My father looked at the garden, the painted pots, the laughter drifting from the porch. "You've done a lot with the place," he said, almost grudgingly. "Didn't think you'd stick around here." I shrugged, trying to keep my voice calm. "I like it here. It feels like home." My mother's gaze softened. Just for a moment. "We just worry about you. this isn't what we pictured for you." I smiled, a little sad, a little proud. It's not what I pictured either, but it's better than I ever imagined. They stayed for a while, watching as the kids played in the yard, as Mia showed off her painted pot with a shy smile. My mother asked questions, her tone less critical, more curious. My father even helped fix the squeaky gate, grumbling but not unkind. As the sun set, they prepared to leave. My mother hugged me, a little awkward, a little tight. "You're doing good work," she whispered. "Grandma would be proud." I watched them drive away, a strange mix of relief and longing in my chest. For the first time, I felt like they saw me, not as Ethan's shadow, but as my own person. The days that followed were busy. The house was always full. Kids coming and going, friends dropping by, neighbors waving from their porches. I found myself smiling more, laughing more, feeling lighter than I had in Evers. The pain of losing Grandma's house faded, replaced by the joy of building something new. Ethan and Lauren became regular visitors. They'd bring over leftovers, help with repairs, even babysit when I needed a break. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching the fireflies, Ethan turned to me, his expression serious. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for everything, for taking the house, for not standing up for you. I didn't realize how much it meant to you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy I used to build forts with, the brother I'd lost somewhere along the way. "It's okay," I said. "We were both just trying to survive. I'm glad you're here now." He nodded, relief flooding his face. "I am too." Lauren squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. "You're amazing, you know that? What you're doing here, it's incredible." I blushed, embarrassed by the praise. "I just want to help, that's all." But it wasn't all. Deep down, I knew I was healing too. Every child who found comfort in my home, every laugh that echoed through the halls, every moment of connection, it all helped fill the empty spaces inside me. One night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, watching the moon rise over the rooftops. I thought about Grandma, about the promise she'd made, about the legacy she'd left behind. I realized that I hadn't lost her house. I'd found my own. I'd created a place where love was louder than disappointment, where hope was stronger than regret. But not everyone was happy about my new life. Word spread quickly in our small town, and soon the whispers started. Some people admired what I was doing, others questioned my motives. There were rumors, gossip, even a few nasty comments online. "She's just trying to get attention. She couldn't handle real family, so she's collecting strays." I tried to ignore it, but some nights the words stung. One afternoon, as I was picking up groceries, I ran into Mrs. Parker, an old family friend. She looked me up and down, her expression skeptical. "I hear you're playing house with other people's children now," she said, her voice dripping with judgment. I smiled, refusing to let her see how much it hurt. "I'm giving them a home, that's all." She sniffed, unimpressed. "Well, I hope you know what you're doing. Not everyone is cut out for that kind of responsibility." I walked away, my head held high, but inside I was shaken. Was I doing the right thing? Was I enough? That night, as I tucked Mia into bed, she looked up at me, her eyes wide and trusting. "Will you still be here in the morning?" she whispered. I knelt beside her, brushing her hair from her face. "I'll always be here," I promised. "You're safe now." Her smile was small, but it lit up the room. In that moment, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be. The next day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the community center, thanking me for my work, inviting me to speak at an upcoming event. They wanted me to share my story to inspire others to open their homes and hearts. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to be that vulnerable, but something inside me said yes. I spent the next week preparing, writing, and rewriting my speech, practicing in front of the mirror. When the day finally came, I stood on the stage, my hands trembling, my heart pounding. I looked out at the crowd, neighbors, friends, strangers, and took a deep breath. I used to think home was a place you were given, but I've learned that home is something you build. It's the people you love, the memories you create, the kindness you share. And sometimes the family you choose is just as important as the family you're born into. The applause was thunderous, and as I stepped off the stage, I felt lighter than I had in years. I was no longer living in someone else's shadow. I was finally standing in my own light. After the speech, something shifted in the air around me. People who had once whispered behind my back now stopped me in the street to say thank you, to share their own stories of feeling left out or overlooked. A few even asked how they could help, or if they could volunteer at the community center. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, not just in my own home, but in the town I'd grown up in. The same streets that once felt cold and judgmental now felt full of possibility. My parents called more often, sometimes just to check in, sometimes to ask about the kids. My mother sent over old family recipes, and my father dropped off tools he thought I might need for repairs. It was awkward at first, but slowly the walls between us began to crumble. We started having Sunday dinners together. Me, my parents, Ethan and Lauren, and whatever foster kids were with me that week. The table was crowded and noisy, full of mismatched plates and laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat on the porch with Ethan. The air was thick with the scent of roses and fresh-cut grass. He looked at me, his eyes serious. "Do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" he asked. I thought about it for a long moment. "Sometimes," I admitted. "I wish Grandma was still here. I wish I'd gotten to keep her house. But if things hadn't happened the way they did, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have this life, these kids, this sense of purpose." Ethan nodded, understanding. "I always thought I had to live up to everyone's expectations, that if I didn't, I'd let everyone down. But watching you, you just do what feels right. I envy that." I smiled, nudging him with my shoulder. "You can do it too, you know. It's never too late to start over." He grinned, a little sheepish. "Maybe I will." As the weeks passed, my house became a hub of activity. There were always kids coming and going, friends dropping by, neighbors offering help. I started a small garden in the backyard, teaching the kids how to plant seeds and care for the earth. We built a tree house together, painted murals on the fence, and hosted movie nights under the stars. The house was alive with energy, with hope, with the kind of love I'd always longed for. But not everything was easy. There were hard days, days when the kids acted out, when the paperwork felt endless, when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush me. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I was making a difference, if I was enough. But every morning I got up, made breakfast, and tried again. Because that's what family does. They show up, even when it's hard. One afternoon, I received a call from the social worker. There was a teenage boy, Alex, who needed a place to stay. He'd been bounced from home to home, never settling, never trusting. I agreed to take him in, knowing it wouldn't be easy. When he arrived, he barely spoke, his eyes wary, his posture defensive. The other kids gave him space, sensing his need for distance. I didn't push. I let him come to me in his own time. I left snacks on the counter, invited him to join us for dinner, offered a listening ear when he was ready. Slowly, he started to open up. He told me about his love for music, his dreams of becoming a songwriter, his fear of being abandoned again. I listened, offering encouragement, never judgment. One night, I found him in the backyard strumming an old guitar I'd picked up at a yard sale. His voice was soft, hesitant, but full of raw emotion. I sat beside him, letting the music wash over me. When he finished, he looked at me, his eyes shining with hope and fear. "Do you think I'll ever find a real home?" he asked. I reached over, squeezing his hand. I said, "You already have. You're safe here. For as long as you need." He smiled, a real smile, and in that moment, I knew I was doing something right. As summer turned to fall, the house filled with the scent of apple pie and cinnamon. The kids went back to school, bringing home stories and artwork and new friends. I started a tutoring program in the evenings, helping them with homework, teaching them the value of persistence and hard work. The community rallied around us, donating supplies, volunteering their time, offering support in ways big and small. My parents became regular fixtures in our lives. My mother taught the kids how to bake bread, my father helped with math homework, and Ethan coached soccer in the backyard. The lines between real family and chosen family blurred, until it didn't matter who was related by blood and who wasn't. We were all in it together. One weekend, we hosted a block party, inviting everyone from the neighborhood. There was music, food, games, and laughter. People who had once judged me now danced in my backyard, sharing stories and making memories. As the sun set, I looked around at the sea of smiling faces and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Later that night, as I cleaned up the last of the dishes, my mother pulled me aside. She looked at me, her eyes full of tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For everything. For not seeing you, for not believing in you. You've built something beautiful here. I'm so proud of you." I hugged her, holding on tight. "Thank you, Mom. That means everything." As I lay in bed that night, listening to the quiet hum of the house, I thought about how far I'd come. I'd lost my inheritance, lost the house I loved, but I'd gained so much more. I'd found my purpose, my family, my home.
Winter arrived with a hush, blanketing the neighborhood in soft white snow. The rose bushes along the fence slept beneath their icy coats, and the treehouse stood silent, waiting for spring. Inside, my house was alive with warmth, kids bundled in blankets, mugs of cocoa steaming on the table, laughter echoing through the halls. The holidays were different now. There were no more tense silences or forced smiles, no more feeling like an outsider in my own family. Instead, there was a sense of belonging, of being exactly where I was meant to be. On Christmas Eve, we gathered in the living room, the tree twinkling with handmade ornaments. My parents, Ethan and Lauren, and all the kids, some who had been with me for months, others just a few days, sat together, sharing stories and dreams. We exchanged gifts, most of them small and simple, but each one chosen with care. Alex played his guitar, leading us in carols, his voice strong and sure. Mia read a poem she'd written about home, her words bringing tears to more than one pair of eyes. After the kids went to bed, the adults lingered by the fire. My father cleared his throat, looking at me with a mixture of pride and regret. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said quietly. "You've done more good here than I ever could have imagined. I was wrong to doubt you." I smiled, feeling the last of the old wounds begin to heal. "We all make mistakes, Dad. What matters is what we do next." He nodded, reaching for my hand. "I'm glad you bought this house. I'm glad you stayed." My mother squeezed my shoulder, her eyes shining. "You've made this place a home for so many. You've made us a family again." Ethan raised his glass, his voice steady. "To new beginnings, to forgiveness, to building something better than what we lost." We toasted, the clink of glasses ringing out like a promise. In that moment, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The new year brought fresh challenges and new faces. More children came through my door, each with their own story, their own scars. Some stayed for a few weeks, others for months. Each one left a mark on my heart, a reminder of why I'd chosen this path. There were setbacks, nights when the weight of responsibility felt too heavy, days when the pain of the past threatened to pull me under. But there was also joy, small victories, quiet moments of connection, the steady, unbreakable bond of chosen family. I kept growing too. I took classes in child psychology, learned about trauma and healing, and found new ways to support the kids in my care. I started a blog, sharing our story with the world, hoping to inspire others to open their hearts and homes. The response was overwhelming. Messages from strangers, offers of help, stories from people who had felt invisible, just like I once had. One afternoon, as I was writing in the kitchen, Mia came in, her face serious. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice small. "Of course," I replied, setting aside my laptop. "Do you ever wish you could go back to before all this happened?" I thought about it, about the pain of losing Grandma's house, the anger and betrayal, the years of feeling like I didn't belong, and I thought about the journey I'd taken, the people I'd met, the love I'd found. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but if I went back, I wouldn't have you, I wouldn't have any of this, and I wouldn't trade that for anything." She smiled, relief flooding her face. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too, Mia. Me too." Spring returned, and with it, new life. The rose bushes bloomed again, the treehouse filled with laughter, and the backyard became a canvas for sidewalk chalk and wild dreams. The house next door, Ethan's house, was full of life too. He and Lauren welcomed their first child, a baby girl with Ethan's eyes and Lauren's smile. Our families blended together, the lines between yours and mine fading until all that was left was ours. We celebrated birthdays, graduations, and every little milestone in between. The kids grew, some moving on to new homes, others choosing to stay. Each goodbye was bittersweet, but I knew I'd given them something real, a sense of belonging, a place to call home, a reminder that they mattered. One evening, as the sun set over Maple Lane, I stood in the garden watching the light dance on the petals of Grandma's roses. I thought about her, about the promise she'd made, about the legacy she'd left behind. I realized that I hadn't just honored her memory, I'd expanded it. I'd taken the love she gave me and shared it with the world, building something bigger and brighter than I ever could have imagined. My parents joined me in the garden, their faces soft with pride. "You've done good, kid," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've made this place something special." My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "You've given us all a second chance." I smiled, feeling the weight of the past finally lift. We did it together, all of us. As night fell, the house glowed with light and laughter. I listened to the sounds of my family, old and new, filling the rooms with hope and joy. I knew there would still be hard days, still be moments of doubt and fear, but I also knew that I was strong enough to face them, that I was surrounded by people who loved me, who believed in me, who saw me for who I truly was. My family gave my inheritance to my brother, but I bought the house next door, and with it, I built a new life, a life full of love, purpose, and belonging. I turned loss into hope, pain into healing, and a broken past into a beautiful future. And if you're listening to this, if you've ever felt left out, overlooked, or underestimated, know that you can do the same. You can build your own home, your own family, your own happiness. You are not defined by what you've lost, but by what you choose to create. This is my story. This is my home. And it's just the beginning.